Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. I wanted to start off today with doing Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading's St. Patrick's Day Shout-Out Challenge by shouting out some channels which I think are well deserving of far more subscribers and attention than they've been getting. This is a great idea, and one of the things that Kelly is great at is helping us build our community, so I want to make sure I participated in that and shout out a few channels. The first channel I want to shout out is Bob the Bookerer, like as in the Booker Prize, I believe. Sorry, my East Texasism makes it hard maybe for me to pronounce that. Bob did a video about experimental fiction the other day, which I thought was just great. I enjoy his channel. I enjoy his approach. Please go check him out. Also, there is Milena Reads. She is a booktuber from, I believe she lives in the Netherlands. And she does some great vlogs and some great reading. And her discussion of the book she's reading is excellent. In her latest vlog, I believe she was discussing Kindred. And I think her discussion of Kindred by Octavia Butler was among the better that I've seen, and that would include my own. Then there is Heidi's Bookish Adventures. I saw that Courtney Ferder had shouted out her channel. I want to do that as well. She's an Estonian booktuber. Her videos are mostly in English, and she does a great job of breaking down books in an interesting way, and I really enjoy her channel. And then also I wanted to shout out Book Time with Elvis. This is a relatively new channel. The creator's name is Mark. He did 2 original tags last week, and I'm going to do them both on Tuesday. I think he lives in the Czech Republic. I may be wrong about all this geography. And then finally I wanted to shout out Gina Stanyer. I believe that's how you say her name. She is a great new booktuber who doesn't have anywhere near enough subscribers. I love the way she talks about books. I love how and I hope this isn't taken as insult. I love how open and kind of quirky her answers to, I think the last 10 books tag I watched the other day maybe were. Really enjoy her channel. So please go check those channels out. I'll leave a link to all of them down below in the description box, as well as a link to Kelly's video about St. Patrick's Day shoutouts, because even though St. Patrick's Day may go by, you can still do the St. Patrick's Day shout out and help us kind of to lift up some booktubers who are deserving of more subscribers. So as I often do in these kind of Saturday hodgepodges, I talk about things I've been thinking about or things I've been doing. I learned through Twitter this week that my sister, my older sister, my only sibling, is starting to write, and I believe she's writing mystery novels. She was talking about the writing process and how much she's enjoying it, and that she kind of finished her first draft of I think what would be her first book. I volunteered to be a beta reader, and she sent it to me, and that has been a really enjoyable experience. Getting another kind of way of reconnecting with the mind and thoughts of my sister. As with anything, part of what she writes comes from her own experience, and some of that is a shared experience in terms of phrasings and things my dad would say, or things that remind me of the community we grew up in. That has been a really great experience getting to beta read that. I will admit it was a little uncomfortable reading a sex scene that my sister had described in the book. That was a new, strange, discomforting experience, but I went right. It didn't last long, and it wasn't all that graphic. Just for a moment, like kind of like, I'm not sure I want to know what my sister thinks about this. But anyway, that was enjoyable. So I did spend some time doing that this week. I also spent quite a bit of time thinking about dogs. I also spent quite a bit of time thinking about history. In part, this is because of a discussion I've been in the comment section with a commenter on one of my videos in the past. Has really made me think about history and how history works and the approaches to history and what I believe to be true about history. Also, then just yesterday, Thursday, Hannah, Zelda, do not bark. Hannah from Hannah's Books put out a video about history and literature that I thought was just excellent. I will leave a link to to that video down below, as all of her videos. It's very thoughtful and far more intelligent than probably what I'm about to say here. But it did get me thinking about history and the practice of history. You know, one of the things that is still probably true, that is sorry about that. The obligatory dog barking interlude came relatively early this week. But what I was saying is that unfortunately, the way history is taught and the way people think about history, I think really sells the subject short in a lot of ways. For most of us, history is a matter of what happened. I can't tell you how many times in my past when I would meet somebody at a social gathering and they asked me what I did, and I said I was a teacher, and they asked me what subject I taught. I said history. They would always say something like, oh, I really love history and I love reading history now, but then they were usually relatively condescending about the topic. You know, I've had my neighbor who knows very well what I do for a living essentially say he would never let his son study liberal arts in college because, you know, that's useless and you can't make any money doing that. Now notice something real quick. He's my neighbor. We live in the same neighborhood. Our houses are essentially valued fairly similarly. But anyway, and then I've had a person basically tell me they thought history was useless because you could just look it all up on the internet. And certainly you can look up historical facts on the internet, and everybody does. You know, I Google things all the time just to see, you know, what date it happened, or somebody will say something went like this, and I go, is that really true? Or I'll actually hear something I never heard of before, and I do go to Google and look for it and see what I think about that, and then maybe it inspires me to read something on that particular topic. But history is so much more than that, and historical literacy is so much more important than Trivial Pursuit. Because the truth of the matter is, in the moments in our lives when we need history, we are very unlikely to look something up on the internet, even though we carry the internet in our pocket with our phone. Because when we need history, it's when we're evaluating politicians and political stances, and when we're in democracies, when we're evaluating what the government's going to do, when we're deciding who to vote for, when we're thinking about policies the government may or may not be pursuing. You know, these are kind of the big moments in which we need historical literacy from whatever country you're from to understand the context in which things are taking place today. Like I always used to tell my kids, we study the past to learn what happened and why it happened, so we know how it created the world we live in today, so we can make plans and make decisions about what we want to happen in the future. And without historical literacy, we are essentially like people with amnesia. We don't know who to trust, we don't know which direction to turn, we don't know what's right and wrong, we have no basis for making our decisions. And people who don't really understand history, or only at a surface level, or only understand the history that politicians tell them is true, oftentimes then make catastrophically bad decisions. Because the important thing in history is not what happened, it's not when it happened, it's not where it happened. The important thing to understand about history is why it happened. Why did this happen? Maybe secondarily, how did this happen? Because those two things are oftentimes closely related. So just look at it from the point of view of the old reporter things, you know, who, what, where, when, how, and why. If you just look at it in those terms, then to me the how and the why, as are true in a newspaper story, are also true of history. And that is what we should be focused on. But that's a lot more complex, because when you start trying to answer the question of why it happened, then you get down to something that Hannah was pointing out. Then you get down to the point where, you know, there really is interpretation. There is the pronouncement we have from historians about why things happened. But as she pointed out excellently in her video, history is what historians have interpreted events from the past and why they happened. It's not actually the past. We can never know exactly what and why all these things happened in the past, because we can't see into the minds of people in the past. We can't actually be in the room. We can't possibly understand all the motivations and everything that went into it. The historical record is just not that greatly preserved, so we have to then interpret why it happened, and historians don't agree on that, which is why you get multiple biographies of somebody like Winston Churchill or George Washington, because each one of those biographers has a slightly different interpretation of what that person's most important contribution was, or why that person matters now, or why that person behaved the way they did. And that really is the beauty and the joy of history, is reading about all these explanations for why, and comparing one to the other, and having that as in your own head, and having that as something that you can draw from. Anyway, ramble about history done. So hopefully many of you didn't skip that, like my students sometimes try to sleep through my lectures. So this week in reading, I am still Booktube prize reading the mammoth biography of Sylvia Plath, Red Comet by Heather Clark. I am, as of today, past the halfway point. I think I mentioned this in a video before, that once I get past the halfway point of the book, I feel like I pick up steam. I kind of think about a book like going uphill, and the first half of the book you're going uphill, you get to the halfway point, and you peak, and then you start to go downhill, and just like in real life you go downhill, you have a tendency to pick up speed. That's generally speaking how I read. I've also mentioned this to you before, that I am an obsessive page counter, that I'm always aware of how many more pages I have, or what percentage of the book I've read, and this is even before I started reading books on a Kindle. To be honest with you, I kind of miss doing that calculation in my head, and perhaps that's one reason why I read so slow. I'm always trying to subtract 351 pages from 927 to see how many pages I have left. But that is kind of an obsessive thing I do when I read, and so this halfway point is a big deal for me. I've also been doing buddy reads. I think you may be aware, because I mentioned this, that I'm buddy reading the short stories of Eudora Welty with Shawn the Book Maniac, and man, that is enjoyable. Eudora Welty is a great writer, but even in that case, Shawn accused me of being grumpy when I talked about the last story, because I found some faults with it, and he's probably right. I did find fault in that. Maybe what's making me a little grumpy is I'm also buddy reading Marilynn Robinson's collection of essays. When I was a child, I read books. I'll put the picture over here. I can never remember the exact title. And I have to say that despite Marilynn Robinson's intellectual prowess, I have some issues with some of the things she says, particularly as they affect as they relate to interpretations and applications of history, which, also been talking about here quite a bit. And then I also started reading Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy Schiff, and I may be a little grumpy because I haven't read as much of this as I wanted to, which I've really been enjoying. I put out a TBR about all the, read-alongs I was going to try to get involved in this month, because this is the month for read-along. So I've got March of the Mammoth. I'm already doing the Booktube Prize, Women's History, the Cleopatra biography. I had said I was going to read maybe some short stories from a book of short stories by Ian Rankin, or I might read a mystery I've had on my shelf for a while by P.D. James. But I ordered some books from last week, and I ordered one of those Maigret mysteries, the third in the series of Maigret mysteries that have been reissued by Penguin. I'd read two of those. They're usually short, right around 120 pages, and I thought I like those. I love mysteries, and so I'll order one of those and I'll read it for March Mystery Madness. And then also a readathon this month I hadn't been participating in is March of the Moderns. And I thought, well, of all the people not to read a novel from that time period, which is, in some ways my favorite time period and the folks in my reading with Hemingway and Faulkner and Fitzgerald and, etc., I should be reading a modern novel. So I think if I have time, I might slip in a rereading of Djuna Barnes' Nightwood, which I read last year, and I think my review of that was titled, "What the Hell Did I Just Read?" Because there were some parts that were so modernist that I thought they kind of lost the thread. And I've heard so many people talk about the book Nightwood since then, and they talk glowingly about the parts of the book that I found confusing and overly modern, and they don't seem to be as interested in the parts of the book that I thought were, interesting and beautifully written. So maybe I think I need to go back and read that, and if I get a chance, I will. It's also a relatively short book, so I might be able to to fit it in, but that does depend on Red Comet, and because this is taking up a lot of my reading time. Not only, by the way, is the book long, the print is relatively small, the pages are suspiciously thin. Anyway, there are all kinds of things about it which make it feel like an even bigger book, and it's heavy. It's hard to hold up when you're reading, which makes me kind of think maybe I should have gotten the ebook version on my Kindle. Oh, by the way, just since I'm rambling, since that's what I'm doing, I got a Kindle. I've mentioned this several times. For Christmas, I thought, well, this is ideal. I can use the Kindle to buy cheaper versions instantly of books that I probably think I won't want to keep. And so, that's what I've done. Because, and I've mentioned this before, memoir is not my favorite genre. I don't know why, but for me, memoir just doesn't end up being that memorable. No pun intended. It's just not my favorite thing. So I ordered the memoirs as ebooks, and now I kind of wish I had physical copies of some of them. Anyway, I think that's it. Let me check my phone, see if I have any more notes for myself about today. No, I think that's it. So there you go. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.